How a cold hearth forced Neanderthals to change their hunting tactics forever. You step into your warm kitchen on a freezing winter evening, flick a small metal switch on your stove, and watch a bright blue ring of flame burst to life instantly. You place a heavy cast iron skillet onto the burner, feeling the radiant heat wash over your face in seconds. You take a thick slice of steak from your refrigerator and lay it gently into the hot oil, listening to the satisfying sizzle as cooked fat fills the air with a rich aroma. You never wonder where the firewood came from. You never worry that the flame might die out before your meal is fully cooked. You assume that heat, fire, and cooked food are endless guarantees of daily life. But for roughly 300,000 years, your heavy-boned Neanderthal cousins lived in a world where fire was not a guaranteed setting on a stove. For 300 centuries, fire was the absolute beating heart of survival in the frozen European wilderness. What happens to an apex predator species when the hearth goes cold? To understand how a cold hearth transformed the way Neanderthals hunted, you must first abandon the modern myth that early humans simply hunted for raw muscle meat. Meat alone is not enough to keep a human body alive in the Arctic cold. If you eat only lean animal muscle without sufficient fat, your liver becomes overwhelmed by excess protein, leading to a fatal medical condition known as rabbit starvation. Neanderthals required massive amounts of dietary fat to power their dense muscular frames and massive brains through sub-zero ice age winters. Fire was their primary industrial technology for unlocking that precious fat. They used controlled hearths to smash heavy animal bones, boil water with hot stones, and render thick marrow grease into storable calories. They used fire to heat birch bark in oxygen-deprived pits, producing the world's first synthetic glue to attach razor-sharp stone points to heavy wooden spears. Fire was not just a luxury for staying warm. Fire was the core engine of Neanderthal hunting technology, butchery, and metabolism. The critical importance of the Neanderthal hearth is vividly documented at the famous archaeological site of Abric Romani, a sheltered rock cliff in northeastern Spain. Excavations led by Dr. Eudald Carbonell and his research team uncovered dozens of perfectly preserved prehistoric hearths stacked across multiple soil layers. These hearths were not random bonfires. They were organized economic centers where Neanderthals meticulously roasted marrow bones, crafted tools, and shared energy with their small family groups. However, extensive climate analyses by researchers like Dr. Vil Robrooks of Leiden University reveal a startling pattern across Pleistocene Europe. During severe glacial maximums and rapid climate shifts, vast forests withered into treeless tundra. Wood became an extremely scarce commodity. In many northern regions, hearths went cold for months or even years at a time. When the fire went out, the entire Neanderthal survival strategy collapsed. Renowned paleoanthropologist Dr. John Speth of the University of Michigan has spent decades analyzing how animal fat dictated ancient human hunting decisions. Speth demonstrated that when fire was unavailable to render grease or soften tough meat, Neanderthals could no longer afford to bring whole animal carcasses back to a central camp. Without fire, breaking down frozen bone collagen and extracting deeply embedded marrow required immense physical energy that yielded diminishing returns. Furthermore, without hearth fires to heat birch pitch, crafting new composite spears became nearly impossible. The loss of fire forced a complete revolution in hunting tactics. Neanderthals could no longer hunt like patient, camp-based ambushers who relied on tool maintenance around a warm fire. They were forced to transform into immediate, high-risk, tactical hunters who altered everything from target selection to butchery locations. Imagine standing on a wind-swept limestone ridge in central France 45,000 years ago during a brutal Ice Age winter. You are a 30-year-old Neanderthal hunter wearing thick, tailored animal hides. Your broad chest heaves in the freezing air as you look down at the dead hearth inside your rock shelter. There is no wood left in the valley. The spruce forests have been replaced by endless, frozen steppe grass. Your fingers are numb, and your stomach aches with a dull, hollow hunger. In your hands, you hold a simple, unhafted wooden thrusting spear because you have no fire to melt birch pitch for a stone point. You cannot afford to hunt a lean deer and carry it back to this cold cave. You need fat, and you need it immediately. You look across the snowy valley and spot a small herd of massive steppe bison wading through deep snowdrifts near a narrow river ravine. You signal to your 3 hunting companions. You do not wait for nightfall. You do not plan a complex multi-day stalk. You use the natural landscape as your weapon, driving the heavy bison toward the steep, icy edge of the ravine. With explosive physical power, you leap from the boulders, thrusting your heavy wooden spear directly into the soft flesh behind the bison's shoulder blade. The beast collapses into the snow, but there is no celebration around a warm campfire tonight. Because your hearth is cold, you must begin field butchery immediately before the carcass freezes solid. You ignore the lean flank meat. You use a sharp flint flake to crack open the warm skull to consume the nutrient-dense brain tissue. You smash the leg bones on a flat boulder to swallow the raw, warm marrow right on the spot. You eat for immediate fat survival, leaving the rest of the carcass behind for scavengers. This brings us to a remarkable, counterintuitive twist in human evolutionary history. You might assume that losing fire would make Neanderthals weaker and less aggressive hunters. In reality, the cold hearth forced them to become far more specialized and aggressive megafauna hunters. Because they could no longer rely on fire to process low-quality foods or preserve lean meats, Neanderthals were forced to target the largest, fattest animals on the landscape, such as woolly mammoths, giant rhinos, and prime adult bison. They abandoned long-term camp stability and adopted a hypermobile, strike-and-gorge hunting lifestyle. They shifted from central place foragers to nomadic apex predators who moved continuously from kill site to kill site, tracking fat across vast, frozen landscapes. However, this tactical shift came with a devastating evolutionary cost. High-risk megafauna hunting without composite stone spears or fire-assisted processing resulted in catastrophic injury rates. Fossilized Neanderthal skeletons consistently show severe bone fractures, head traumas, and broken limbs mirroring the injury patterns of modern rodeo riders. While this brute force hunting tactic allowed Neanderthals to survive periods of wood scarcity, it placed immense stress on their small, isolated populations. When your scrawny, thin-boned sapiens ancestors arrived in Europe carrying flexible thrower, long-distance trade networks for high-grade stone, and advanced thermal management techniques, they did not need to wrestle giant beasts at close range. Sapiens kept their hearths burning, preserved their energy, and outcompeted the heavily bruised Neanderthals. When you look at your modern life today, this ancient struggle reveals a profound truth about human nature. We often believe that technology makes us soft, and that losing our tools forces us back into a simple, natural state. But the story of the cold hearth proves the exact opposite. When early humans lost their most vital technology, they did not return to peace. They were forced into higher risk, higher stress, and more extreme behaviors just to keep their bodies running. When our modern power grids flicker, when supply chains stall, or when our heating systems fail during a winter storm, we feel that same ancient spike of vulnerability. We realize how thin the margin of safety truly is between comfortable living and desperate survival. You stand in your warm kitchen once more, turning off the gas stove and watching the blue flame disappear into darkness. You carry your warm plate to the dinner table, feeling the cozy heat radiating through your home. You take a bite of food, appreciating the effortless luxury of a hot meal. You realize that your survival today does not depend on wrestling a wild beast in a snowdrift or swallowing raw marrow beside a frozen riverbank. You are the living beneficiary of an unbroken human story that learned to master the flame, conquer the cold, and keep the hearth burning through the darkest winters of prehistory.